Start your wellness journey at Whole Foods Market, where it's Jumpstart January through the 16th. Stock up on supplements with some of the year's biggest savings. Plus, save on air-chilled organic boneless skinless chicken breasts, organic Honeycrisp apples, organic large Hass avocados, and more. And since Whole Foods Market is the only certified organic national grocer, it's easy to make them your wellness destination. Jumpstart your January now at Whole Foods Market.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Later in the show, we'll hear from Adi Dolan, who's the chair of Ashridge Park FC, which is a grassroots club based in Wokingham in Berkshire, and he had some great stories to tell. But Kieran, I've waited, 2 years to say this, but we actually had breaking news while we were interviewing Adi on Wednesday morning. Actually, you very excitedly jumped in, typed with the news that Thomas Tuchel has been sacked.
Yes. So Chelsea have moved, and I think we've seen a bit of a pattern this season in terms of managers have a bit of a grumble, and then they get the sack. So yeah, we saw that with Scott Parker. I think Brendan Rodgers is perceived by some as a bit of a dead man walking. He's had a few moans as well, and Thomas Tuchel has been just whining. You know, he's for the past few weeks, despite being given £250 million to play with in the transfer market. So, I'll be working out the totals for Chelsea dismissals since 2003, and when Roman Abramovich came in, I think we could potentially be going through the £100 million barrier since then in terms of all the payments they've made to managers in terms of sackings, wrongful dismissals. I think Conte had a claim against the club which was successful, and also the effectively the transfer fees that they paid. When Villas-Boas came to the club, I think they paid a large amount of money for him to leave his existing club. So that it's a ridiculous amount of money that they've spent over the years in terms of trying to get the right coach in the job.
Yeah, don't work it out during the pod. Work it out after the pod, and we'll do it for the next pod. How's that?
Yes.
I think a lot of people will actually have lost money betting on Brendan Rodgers to be the next manager sacked after your unfortunate spanking of them on Sunday, because the body language of the players and Rodgers' comments afterwards made it seem that that relationship was about to end, didn't it?
Yes. They didn't seem very interested. I thought we played well, and a win's always a win, but the lack of effort from Leicester was very noticeable. So you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people will be surprised that he's survived beyond Tuchel.
Yeah, I guarantee you one thing, that they put a huge effort in, because we'll play them the day after their new manager comes in, as I imagine will happen with Chelsea as well. I'm really upset about Thomas Tuchel being sacked, because I was going full on the irony with our first news story being the biggest one of the year. The news that West Ham are having issues with their club's inaugural official decentralised asset management partner, which it sounds like a job title in Tumoni's sketch. I'm not entirely sure what their official decentralised asset manager partner is. I imagine it's some kind of token, but there's issues going on, Kieran.
Yes, and I think a lot of credit on this story has to go to two of the finest Rottweilers in journalism. Martin Calladine. If you don't follow him, folks, Ugly Game on Twitter. Martin does a fantastic job, and Joey D'Urso as well at The Athletic, who have highlighted this rather strange relationship. This company called Peak Defy, which appears to run some form of crypto lottery. Now, for me, crypto is a lottery to begin with. So, but I think what Martin and Joey have called into question, what exactly is an official decentralized asset management partner? West Ham don't seem to be very clear on this themselves. But it is one of these slightly obscure, slightly uncomfortable feeling organisations, and it's got 2 Twitter feeds, one of which is in English, and it's got around about 55,000 followers, and the other one is Russian. And is this an opportunity for money or assets to be transferred from one of those countries to another? Where does this stand in terms of the position of the UK government? To have a football club associated with an organisation which is associated with Russia, and also we have to say that our beef is with Vladimir Putin. I used to teach in Russia, as you know, and have many friends back there. Is Peak DeFi? Is it a good crypto coin in which to put your money? All I would say is that I had a look this morning, and it has fallen in value by 97% already this year. So West Ham is associated with an organisation which has lost all of its value. So my understanding is I think West Ham are doing what we've seen with a few clubs. We saw this with Norwich, we saw this with Manchester City, that they've got themselves involved. I think the same happened with Barnsley. I believe at Charlton, who had some sort of crypto coin partner on the back of their shorts. That's now disappeared. Once again, blinded by the check. I know we use this glib phrase, but they take the money first, and they appear to do their due diligence afterwards, and it doesn't look clever. We want football to be an industry with which we can take pride, with which we can feel that we've got a degree of comfort, and it's not just one of these stories; it's again and again and again, and it does make you feel slightly uneasy about the relationship between the football industry and organisations such as this.
Yeah, you don't need to say that about Vladimir Putin, Kieran. We all know that you have no beef with the ordinary Russian in the streets. And speaking of breaking news, you'll be delighted to see or hear a little strap has just gone along the bottom of my laptop saying "Graham Potter to Chelsea?" ? There you go. Just thought I'd cheer you up with that news.
Thanks a bunch.
And to, if you want to restore your pride, though, Kieran, I mean, the interview we just had with Adi Dolan at Ashridge Park FC has certainly put a spring in my step, and I'm sure our listeners will agree. Before we get there, though, unfortunately, one of our other stories is also about crypto. Stake, the crypto company which sponsors Everton and Watford, have been hit with a $400 million lawsuit.
Yes, I mean, there's 2 stories in relation to Stake. First of all, there's some sort of squabble in respect of the people that set it up. One of the guys who was connected to the 2 founders of Stake, a guy called Chris Freeman, saying that he was eased out. So he's put in a huge lawsuit. I think the 2 founders are Australian. So big hello to Nick Kyrgios, by the way. I think if Nick Kyrgios thinks that his life is bad, can you imagine Nick Kyrgios at Newcastle versus Palace or the West Ham game or our game in terms of VAR decisions at the weekend? I think the lad might spontaneously combust.
Yeah, we'll pass over the Newcastle one. Everybody makes mistakes.
So that's one issue. Stake.com does appear to be doing quite well in terms of its profile. It's gone again for the legitimacy and normalisation by association with football clubs and celebrities. So I think they're involved with Drake, and if these people start to promote the products, then that's a way of tapping people in. So, there's an issue there. The other issue in respect of Stake is Everton won their first match in the Carabao Cup. Congratulations to them for that. And Stake, who are their front of shirt sponsor, said, "Oh, we're going to do a special promotion on the back of that. If you wager $5,000, we will give you a free $10 bet."
Wow.
Whoa, exactly. And so a lot of people say, hold on, $5,000. How long? Is this spread over a long period? You got to wager $5,000 in a week in order to get your $10 prize. Now, let's just be a little bit careful here. If somebody goes and spends $5,000 on one bet and it loses, that does sound really dumb. You could, in theory, do 5,000 $1 bets on effectively the equivalent of heads or tails, and you're not going to lose that $5,000. But that would be an extremely long-winded and tedious process to go through. To be fair to Everton, this has been highlighted to them. They have come under a lot of pressure from a variety of Everton fan groups since this relationship started. And I believe now they have said to Stake, we are not being connected with any such promotions in the future. Front of shirt, fine, but don't use our name for something like that, because it just looks absolutely terrible.
Agreed. You may be right with the Graham Potter news, Kieran. I think it may be a spoof, because the same companies have set a ribbon across the bottom of my laptop saying Ted Lasso has also been linked with the job at Chelsea. So stand down. Here's some heartbreaking news, Kieran. I don't know if I'm going to be able to read this without my bottom lip going all a tremble. It seems that a shortage of private jets is causing a problem for some of England's biggest clubs. What a world we live in, Kieran.
Exactly. There's a link here to the Chelsea story, because when Chelsea lost 3-0 at Leeds, Thomas Tuchel said, I'd travel up by coach.
Yeah.
And people are going, okay, we're not feeling a lot of sympathy here. By all accounts, Chelsea had to charter 3 private jets to get to Leeds, and they had to all catch the coach back home. And frankly, if I'd just been stuffed 3-0 and I was Todd Bowley, I'd make them walk. But there were no return flights because of staffing issues. But there is actually a much broader issue in terms of there is now a crisis in jet travel as far as this country is concerned. And here we're really focusing on domestic flights. So here's my in-depth investigation. You can see how I spend my weekends. What else could I do after beating Leicester 5-2? But to go into this into some depth, there's a number of factors why clubs aren't able to travel by jet, or there actually is a much broader transport problem. First of all, and we go to our old friend Brexit, because you can only use UK registered aircraft for domestic flying. So of course that reduces the choice. Previously, you were allowed to use any aircraft from any of the 20 odd EU nations. So we've lost that. As a result of COVID, so these small airlines, they weren't able to fly. So some of them have gone bust, and there's one called JOTA or Yotta Aviation, which used to provide flights for 6 clubs. Well, Yotta Aviation has gone bust, so we've got another supply problem. There's a limited pool of aircraft available in general, and it's reached such a crisis in inverted commas that clubs are now considering chartering Boeing 737s. Now, Boeing 737's got 200 plus seats. For normally they'd be looking for much smaller aircraft, which have got 40 to 50. The commercial airlines are who would perhaps consider chartering to the football clubs are saying, well, actually, we're in August, September. August, certainly, as far as we're concerned, is our peak demand period. It coincides with school holidays. So they're saying, we're not going to give you any aircraft. Train strikes have meant that there's increased demand for flights, and a lot of the train strikes are taking place on Saturdays. And we've had this discussion about is this going to impact the Brighton versus Palace match on Saturday week, and then you've got the what if issue. Aircraft are not 100% reliable, and they have to be tested and they have to be maintained to a very high standard. So what happens if you do charter an aircraft and during the pre-flight maintenance something is found to be wrong? What you were able to do relatively easily in previous years was to simply say, okay, we'll just jump off this one and we'll go and find another one. There is no spare capacity. So that means that there is the potential problem of players and staff of clubs being stranded at aircraft. You throw into that, it's a World Cup year where the World Cup's effectively taking out 6 weeks of the season, which means we've got a really condensed season, and that Saturday, Tuesday, Wednesday approach, which is being undertaken by all of the clubs playing in Europe. They claim, and you can understand this to a degree. If we don't fly, if we have to, then it's going to take hours and hours, and there's going to be insufficient recovery time between matches. So it is a big issue. Again, are we going to feel a lot of sympathy, or any sympathy for millionaires and their travel issues? Probably not, but that's the background to the story.
Do you know, I'd make them fly Ryanair. I'd love to see pampered Premier League footballers just queuing up with the rest of us taking their chances. The odd kick-off might be delayed by 5 hours, but fine. Morecambe, who I doubt have ever chartered a private jet, have been put up for sale by owners Bond Group Investments.
Yes, and again, this is a much broader issue. Morecambe also borrowed money. They took out some form of loan, which has been secured on some of the properties owned by Morecambe Football Club. I believe it's not linked to the stadium itself. I understand. I think it's the Shrimpers Trust. Have some form of either a golden share or they own the stadium, but that's not been the case. The issue in respect of Morecambe is that the Bond Group is effectively controlled by two guys called Colin Goldring and Jason Whittingham. They are also the owners of Worcester Warriors rugby club,
yes,
which has a long list of issues: unpaid wages, unpaid taxes. I believe one of the players who was living in a property owned by the club, he was evicted last week because Worcester Warriors haven't been paying the mortgage, so the property's been repossessed. So it looks like a mess. Morecambe have done fantastically well to make the progress that they have in football. They run a pretty tight ship as a club. I think they probably got one of the lowest, if not the lowest, wage budgets in the division in which they're currently playing. If we take a look at the owners, they sort of say, nothing to do with us, Gov. One of the owners, a guy called Colin Goldring, he's recently been struck off struck off the solicitors register. So you go, okay, been struck, and I work for a professional body, chartered accountant. We know lots of other people working in other professions. The one thing that your professional body is really loath to do is to strike you off. That is very much a last resort. So I don't think it necessarily reflects particularly well on the individual concerned. Fit and proper person. So you just a solicitor struck off the register, still deemed to be a fit and proper person to own a football club. To be fair, he's also resigned as a director, as has Jason Whittingham. So they both resigned as directors of Morecambe. Hopefully, somebody will come in. I'm a great believer in being able to travel the length and breadth of the country to go and watch football, and places like Morecambe and Barrow and Harrogate have come into football in relatively recent years following promotion from non-league, is for any sort of football train spotter is something to look forward to. So the club itself, I think, is on relatively solid foundations financially, but it has at the same time lost money. It's always a cause for concern.
Yeah, luckily I'm a comedian, so there's nothing I can do bad enough to get me struck off the comedians register. But what would the asking price be for a club like Morecambe, do you think?
I think you should be able to buy it for if you've got the property assets involved, either high six figures or 1 to 2 million, I don't think there'll be a significant price involved,
Right.
because there will be a relatively limited pool of people who are willing to buy it. So I don't think the price should be too much of a barrier to somebody who wants to take on the responsibility. The big issue with running a football club is that they tend to lose money.
Yeah.
So it's not the purchase price; it's the maintenance costs.
Cambridge United has bought Abbey Stadium almost 20 years after it was sold.
Yes, and I think this is really good news. Cambridge United seem to be ticking an awful lot of boxes in terms of the way that they're being run. So they were sold to an organisation called Grosvenor Properties, which because the club had cash flow problems 20 years ago. It's now got new owners. It was paying around about 350 grand a year in rent in total. I think that will of course include the property, so that will be a cost saving as far as the club is concerned going back. But what's really good to see is that the new owners have said, we are a progressive club. We're setting up a shadow board, and there's going to be a golden share. So that will mean that the shadow board, which will be put together on the basis of a number of fan groups, it will be able to approve any further property deal as far as the stadium is concerned. And we've said time in, time out that once a football club is separated from its stadium, that can be a disaster. There's not that many fantastic stories following the ground being sold. So having this as a form of protection, fair play to the owners, and all the best for people at Cambridge.
Yeah, we have one more story, Kieran, before that lovely interview with A.D. Dolan. And I would say, Kieran, that this was a heartwarming story, were it not for the fact that we are living in the fifth largest economy in the world. Celtic and Rangers fans united last weekend ahead of their game to fight the cost of living crisis.
Yes, and this is again testament to we are rivals. We like to pick holes in our rivalry in terms of the relationship with the other club, but we're still football fans. The vast majority of football fans, I think, are from certainly of our age group, are from a particular background. And there is a crisis going on in terms of food poverty and fuel poverty. And just hats off to Rangers and Celtic fans, but also the Everton and Liverpool fans who came together to put money into food banks. I'm sort of slightly connected with food banks as well. If you can just if you've got a spare few tins or some packets of rice or anything, it does make a difference. Nobody, and I know that there's some stories in some of the tabloids about it's scroungers that go to the food bank and they're spending all their rest of the money on this, that, and the other. That's not the case. I've done deliveries of food to people in receipt of these things. And what I've had to say, what I've seen, I live a comfortable middle class existence, is soul destroying. And as you rightly said, for a successful economy, or a so-called successful economy, the distribution of resources, and I'm not a socialist. The distribution of resources is wrong, and the fact that we've got football fans coming together makes me so proud to be a football fan. But as you rightly said, why on earth is this taking place?
I was at a meeting yesterday at Palace, foundation meeting, and we're talking to the club about using parts of the stadium as warm rooms during the winter, where people can come and just be warm for a couple of hours because they can't afford to heat their own flats or houses. It's 2022, Kieran. It shouldn't be happening. But as you say, it's a source of pride that football fans come together to try and do something about it. And that sort of links into our interview, because we love talking about the Man Uniteds and Barcelonas of this world, but we also like to reflect on grassroots football. And you can't get more grassier or rooty than Ashridge Park FC in Wokingham, and we spoke to Chairman Adi Dolan about life at that level.
Start your wellness journey at Whole Foods Market, where it's Jumpstart January through the 16th. Stock up on supplements with some of the year's biggest savings. Plus, save on air-chilled organic boneless skinless chicken breasts, organic Honeycrisp apples, organic large Hass avocados, and more. And since Whole Foods Market is the only certified organic national grocer, it's easy to make them your wellness destination. Jumpstart your January now at Whole Foods Market.
Adi, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the history of the club. Is it true you were started at a barbecue?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Thanks a lot for having me on. So I'm a Geordie in exile down in Royal Berkshire. Came down here for work, as many of my fellow Geordies do, because obviously the streets down here are paved with gold, as you know. It can get quite slippy. But as soon as I was down here, and then we settled in and had a family, and like most dads, the most important thing you think is, well, where are my kids going to play football? So I was on the hunt for a local football club, and a lot of my friends pointed me in the direction of this club, Ashridge Park FC, based in Wokingham in Berkshire, the hotbed of football. And it looked like a great setup. So I got involved in them about 10 years ago. Took my lad along to a little under sixes soccer school on a Saturday morning. And, you try and help out. And I'm putting the balls away at the end of the session. And I look around and the coach is gone. And suddenly I'm in charge. And fast forward, I'm the chair of the football club. So, right. Like most great clubs, it was formed over a beer. This one in a bloke's back garden, because his son was registered at the bigger club down the road, Wokingham, who he couldn't get a game. He was warming the subs bench up every week in 1991, and that kind of paints the picture of what grassroots football was like in 1991. It was pretty much built for those kids that had a level of technical ability, and it wasn't really built for everyone. And so he said to his mate over the garden fence, well, should we form our own football club? And thus the club was born, and it really accelerated in the first couple of years to really grow the number of teams and the number of players quite quickly, to the point where we are today, 31 years later, with 29 youth teams, 2 men's teams, just under 400 registered kids. So it's a story of a lot of grassroots teams.
That's a lot of teams, isn't it? Even Kieran thinks Berkshire's posh, by the way, and he's from Sussex. Looking at your website, I love your value. Tell us about your status as an FA community club, because that's obviously very important to you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's just a name at the end of the day, but it means a lot to us. And the FA now have changed some of the nomenclature around that, so it's now, they call it an England accredited club, and you get to have the little 3 lions on the badge, which the kids love. But effectively, the reason that we wanted to pursue this status, of which I think only 5% of grassroots clubs in England ever managed to achieve, was it really shows parents kind of what you are as a club. It means that in order to achieve that status, you have to have coaches that have achieved a certain level of qualification. You need the odd coach who's gone beyond that and gone even higher than that into the level 2s and UEFA qualifications. You need to be able to show a pathway for children to develop through the age groups. And then at the end of the day, you have to have a sound and sustainable financial plan. Now, that would probably be quite useful in a lot of professional clubs. But at our level, it shows that, okay, we've got a 5-year financial plan, which to parents shows that, well, actually, this isn't just a bunch of mums and dads who are carrying bibs and balls around. This is people who have devoted a bit of time into looking at how can we deliver the best possible experience for kids, and organising that and being able to present that with all of our governance and our financial planning.
Yeah, we'll come on to the finance later. I'm going to move on quickly because Kieran's on mute, luckily, because otherwise you'd be hearing him giggle at the phrase bibs and balls. That's exactly the sort of thing he likes. I love your emphasis, AD, on respect and on developing youngsters not just as players, but as human beings. Is that one of the reasons you think that you're so popular?
I think so. I think I listened to the pod a little few weeks back. You had the Grimsby chair on, Jason
Yes,
Stockwood,
Jason. Yeah, yeah.
and I was really surprised to hear that he said, "Well, in our academy, we're all about developing young, really decent young people, and if they end up being footballers, then that's a bit of a bonus." I thought, bloody hell, that's what we do. The object of the grassroots clubs is to do that. We're not really there to produce professional footballers. We're part of the pathway. Harry Kane will have started at his local grassroots club and then gone on, but we're not there to make professional footballers. We're there to develop young people who understand the importance of respecting the game, respecting their opposition, determination, teamwork, trying the best in everything that they do. If they end up being decent footballers, it's almost like a bonus. So for us, that's what it's all about, and that really gets through parents, because suddenly mums and dads will tell their friends, "Oh, it's a really, really good club, Ashridge. It's really nice and it's a lovely atmosphere." And that's what we want. We're not really bothered about, we're top of Division 1. But if we end up producing an environment where kids are laughing and happy and smiling and enjoying their Saturday mornings, then we've absolutely achieved what we want to do.
Yeah, speaking of Division 1, what league is it that your club's playing?
Oh, we're all over the place. So we've got, as I said, 29 youth teams. We've got a couple of teams in Division 1. We've got a couple of teams in Division 10. The thing that binds them all together, though, is that they enjoy it. They love it. They train during the week. They play on a Saturday morning on our home ground, and they're playing side by side on pitches right next to each other. So, as long as the kids are happy, that's all we're bothered about.
Well, speaking of your home ground, Adi, this is a very important question, because you are clearly a club with a sense of humour as well. I love this bit on your website, which says, "Where do we play? Where does the magic happen? The Stadium of Dreams, the Fields of Inspiration, ... St Crispin School to the right and round the back," which is lovely. So my question is, though, Adi, do the kids laugh at your jokes?
No, of course they don't. I mean, the fun of running a football club is in the committee meetings, and thankfully we have a fantastic committee. And on our committee we have someone called Dave, and every club needs a Dave.
Oh.
And Dave is our head of digital, which basically means he runs the website. And the unfortunate thing about that is we give Dave free rein to basically run that content. And he gets very excited about it. So Crispin's has become known as the Field of Dreams. The kids just kind of roll their eyes, to be honest. But again, it's about creating that atmosphere of we're not taking ourselves too seriously. It is about the kids. It's not about the dads living their dreams through some 7-year-old. It's not about being ultra competitive. It's just about having fun, and that fun comes to life on a Saturday at about 11 a.m. because the manager's WhatsApp group comes to life with tales of glory at Sandhurst or absolute despair in South Reading. So yeah, it's an exciting place to be.
Every single person listening to this pod now who's ever played football at any level will be picturing Dave in their head. I just imagine how excited was when Dave got home and just went, "Head of digital, thank you very much." There's a sense of social responsibility too about your club. Tell us about your relationship with White Croc FC in Gambia.
Oh, this is great. So a lot of clubs will bundle their old kits up at the end of the season and shove them into bin bags, and off they go in some lorry to somewhere in Africa. And you hope that you're helping someone out. But what we wanted to do was really form a relationship with a club, because we'd started to hear stories of unscrupulous behaviour once that kit arrived at the port in Africa. So if you've shoved a couple of Premier League tops in the bin bag as well, then those tops basically become currency. And what that means is, that kit might not get to the kids who need it. So through a mutual connection, we were able to make contact with White Croc FC and a chap called Amadou Jammeh, who runs that club. And it meant that we had an absolute direct line to a partner club down in Africa. So it means that every 6 months we put a load of kit in a container and it goes directly to them. And it means that they can kind of feed back their experiences. But what's more important than that is our kids have started to record some of their training sessions and send messages to their teams who are doing the same back. So we're forming real connections, and it's almost the benefit of that as well is to our kids, because let's face it, those kids in Gambia are not going to have the same experience as those in Berkshire, and it allows the kids who play for us to get a sense of the responsibility that they've got, and experiencing the fact that there are others who aren't quite as comfortable as they are, and that kind of extends now though to the things that we're doing back here at home, and there are cases of financial hardship. And this thing, I mean, this year as well is taken on quite a few Ukrainian refugees. The some kids have arrived in the UK, and they've just got the clothes on their back, but they've grabbed a football. They've brought a football with them because that's what they want to do. And it's such a great escape for those kids when some of them have got some real problems and struggles in their lives, to just turn up on a Thursday night and train with friends and play on a Saturday morning and get a real experience and enjoyment from it. So it's something we take extremely seriously. And especially in the girls' side of the game now as well. So we've noticed in working with the FA that there's a real drop off in girls' football at teenage level, and a lot of that is around about body image and how they feel that they look on a football pitch. So we've worked with our girls' teams and our kit suppliers to create a kit for girls, and we've also created a sports bra fund. So again, talking to some of the girls and then going through their parents, and what's important is, sports bras are really expensive apparently. Didn't know this, but apparently that's the case, and it might actually dissuade some families from going out and spending that money, and then they end up not playing football. So we've just said, look, really discreetly, if we can help in any way, then just let us know. We'll take care of it. So we've set that fund up as well. We think it's really important.
I absolutely agree. I think that's fantastic. Palace, for our foundation, are looking after a group of Afghan teenagers who all turn out to be brilliant footballers as well.
Yeah.
So who knows, in 5 years' time they might be playing for us. But that notion about the retention of girls in teenage years, that's a new one to me. That's really important. So
it's a real drop off, a real issue in the game. But I think what's great now is the Lionesses have driven that on a bit.
Yeah, of course.
And the girls are starting to shake that a little bit, but we have to support them from the bottom up.
Well, talking about money then, we are a football finance pod, obviously. You mentioned the forward planning, but how are you financing Ashridge Park? What are your major costs, and is it a constant struggle?
Well, unfortunately, we haven't got any Saudi-backed owners who've come in, but effectively to run our club costs us about £60,000 a year. In terms of covering that, we cover that through 80% is covered through registration fees. Around about 10% of that is covered by our sponsors and some grants, and the rest is by profit that we run through an annual tournament, which is really important to us. So yeah, that 60k, we have to find that every year. And is it a struggle? Not a huge one. I mean, and that's part of the financial sustainability bit. We've got people in place through our treasurers who produce monthly reports for us as to where we need to go and what we need to do in terms of finding sponsorship. And we've got some really supportive parents and local companies who help us out with that. But that 10% bit on the end of the tournament is incredibly important to us, and it's a really big event in our calendar. And it's not only a money maker, but in order to run it, we need about 100 volunteers from the club, and they're all parents. And the beauty of that is it brings all of those parents together from different age groups to reinforce that kind of feel of being a community club.
Well, Mike Ashley's looking for a new club.
Bring him in. Well, I think we could work really well with Mike. He did a really great job at my club, Newcastle, and I think he's looking for a great opportunity. I think Berkshire could be the place for him.
Can you imagine that? And imagine that he comes in and starts cutting costs at Ashridge Park FC.
I think we can reduce the quality of these bibs.
Tracy Crouch, in her fan-led review, emphasised quite rightly the importance of grassroots football. Do you hope that may actually lead to clubs further up the pyramid realising that they should be sharing some of their money with clubs like you?
Well, I mean, it is, of course, already happening in a sense in terms of the Football Foundation, which really is the vehicle for the FA, the Premier League and the government to start to trickle some of that vast sum of money down to the grassroots clubs. And we've seen that in the last couple of years through the development of a brand new 3G facility in the Wokingham area. of which we are a partner club. So in order to build these facilities now, the Football Foundation needs to know that there are clubs in those areas that will use them, absolutely sweat that asset to its full extent. So we partnered with our local council to get the funding for that facility. So effectively that they can prove that we're going to use it. And then we get a brand new 3G facility out of it. On the back of that, we've also got at our home ground at Crispin's, we've got new goalposts, we've got new nets. And that's developed really from about 4 or 5 years ago, where we were playing on a very basic, hard sand AstroTurf. And now we've got this great facility in the middle of the town. So the money is there. It is starting to trickle through, but clubs have to go and look for it. That you've got to be proactive and get involved and put those submissions and put those grant applications in.
You've worked with the Premier League, though, haven't you, through your day job?
Yeah, I have done a bit of work with the Premier League and a few Premier League clubs. So for the last 23 years, I've been an air traffic controller at Heathrow. So that's why I moved down south. And it was a great kind of link, really. So I got in, a chap called Kenny Swain got in touch with me, who you may or may not have heard of. Kenny
absolutely.
Swain.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So European Cup winner with Aston Villa. Yeah. Turns out that Kenny Swain is a massive aviation geek. Loves aeroplanes. So he emailed into air traffic control and said, I'm really interested in this. And then someone said, Eddie, you're quite into football. Do you want to meet Kenny Swain? So that was about 8 or 9 years ago. And Kenny at the time, and still does, work for the Premier League, and said, would you be interested in coming to talk to the Premier League about air traffic control? I thought, what's the point of this? Because clearly the Premier League doesn't want to know about aeroplanes taking off and landing. But it was the kind of things that we do that they were interested in. So it was about, the main focus was around something called challenge and be challenged. So in our profession, we have to have an environment where any individual can challenge another one and say, I'm not quite sure that what you're doing is correct there or safe or whatever. And that person needs to be able to respond and say, okay, I think you're right. And we have a completely open culture in air traffic control, and you have to have that when you're dealing in a safety critical environment. Now, in football, that's not really the case. A junior coach cannot go up to the first team manager and say, I'm not sure about this session that you've put on today. I think we should do something else. He'll probably find himself marched out of the training ground. So they were really interested in that idea of being able to challenge one another. And they're also interested in how we develop our instructors to be more mentors rather than just trying to spot errors in people. So that really developed on, and I ended up working for a few clubs, including Tottenham Hotspur and Crystal Palace, actually.
Wow.
So went into Crystal Palace's academy, had a great few sessions with their guys as well. A very progressive club, I must say, who's looking outside of football, as many of the professional clubs are now, to try and find that extra few percent to get their whole organisation and their whole coaching structure to work at a higher level.
Well, maybe you could work on our transfer policy as well. That would really help. That's fascinating. That's really interesting to hear that clubs are looking at. I mean, because you can't imagine any link initially between air traffic control and Premier League football, but it's interesting that there are people at Premier League football clubs who are just looking, as you say, to find something to give them that extra 1%. And what's, absolutely. I mean, Kenny Swain must be delighted as well, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So he's really glad at how it's all worked out. But he's quite a forward kind of thinking guy, and they've gone and developed that further. So they've gone into lots of different companies who do lots of different things to try and look at, well, how can you help us? So there's the obvious things of going to the military and doing all the assault course stuff and learning all of that stuff. But I think they've also gone into other big organisations as well, like blue tech companies and people like Google, to say, well, how do you develop ideas? How do you give people the freedom and the environment to come up with new systems and new ways of doing things? Because football can very much be a sport where you follow countries and clubs. So we generally lag behind the Spanish by about 5 or 10 years, and we follow whatever, tick-a-tack football. We'll do that for a bit, then we'll do something else. But it's an idea of being able to develop their organisation so they can come up with new ideas themselves.
Ada, your enthusiasm and your passion for grassroots football is obvious to anybody listening to me. So what are your ambitions for Ashridge Park? And is there anything that our listeners can do to help, especially those that are down there in Berkshire with you?
Ambitions really is sustainability. I mean, that's what you want. I mean, anybody that's involved in the running of a grassroots football club is merely a steward. You know, they're just a custodian of the club for a short space of time, usually for when their child happens to be signed up as a player. What tends to happen is that player will then turn 18, go off to uni, and suddenly, you know, you're still picking up balls and bibs and cones because there's nobody kind of backfilling those roles. So I guess what we want to do is produce an environment where the next generation can come in and pick something up that's got a really good, solid foundation, that's got a long-term plan, and then we can develop in a direction that the next generation wants to take it in. So it's getting people involved really, and getting people involved behind the scenes, because as you understand, you know, volunteering for anything can be a bit daunting. But I would say that whatever effort you put into running a grassroots football club, you're paid back tenfold in the rewards that you get of seeing the kids every Saturday morning.
Adi, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It really has. Thank you so much. And if there's anything we can do to help you in the future, let us know.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Kevin.
I thoroughly enjoyed that interview, Kieran. And I think it's nice to be reminded that 95% of football in this country relies on people like Adi and Dave, head of digital, who just are just enthusiastic and excited about giving young people the chance to play football. That stuff about trying to keep teenage girls playing football with sports bras, it's really important. I didn't know that, and that's the sort of thing that a club can quietly get on with. And it's also interesting. And who knew that we'd have two airplane stories in the same pod? But it's interesting to hear Adi say, because normally, because I was expecting him to say, "No, we're desperately short of money. The rest of football needs to help fund us." But it's the opposite. He said, in fact, money is there. Money is trickling down from the Premier League and the FA, but you just have to go and look for it.
Yes, yeah. I thought it was a life affirming listen, as far as I was concerned. You know, Adi was so positive and so enthusiastic, which is comforting to hear. At a time of the grassroots is in crisis in some parts, it's interesting to know that there are some funds available. I also spoke to Adi before the interview. And he was saying they were really looking forward to the start of the season, which is supposed to be taking place this Saturday, but lots of local councils around the country have not marked the pitches or put the goal nets in because the grounds are too hard. So again, is this a case for saying do we need a greater investment in 3G pitches where weather concerned? Yes, we're used to waterlogged pitches. Yes, we're used to frozen pitches in winter, and that's one of the things we tend to grumble about. But I've never known football matches to not take place because they're unable to mark the pitch.
Yeah. Thank you to everybody who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. That's very kind of them. And if you'd like to join them and make a small monthly contribution to our pod, please go to patreon.com/priceoffootball. And if you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, as always, folks, thanks very much for your support for the show. Patreon is one way in which you can do that. And another way is to give us a review, and to go to your podcast app, and if you can give us 5 stars if you think we're worth it, we'll be most grateful. And if you want to say something about the show, we're always listening to the feedback, or you might even want to say that you'd rather have the show presented by Thomas Tuchel and Rishi Sunak, both of whom are looking for work at present, and we wouldn't be that offended.
I don't think producer Guy would like having Rishi Sunak on, because you know what producer Guy's like with people that are richer than him, and there aren't many of them. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. the price of football.